The episode you have just seen, the episode you have just seen is about what happened in Kisumu. Now, let us recognize there are three people on the hit list for the intelligence community that year. And that was Mboya, of course, and then Agwing's Godek, which was actually the first assassination, and the third person, of course, was Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Now, for various reasons, it must have been decided, instead of having a hit on him, to finish him completely politically, to remove him completely out of the way. And that is what the Kisumu operation was all about, what you've just viewed in the previous episode. Well, I would think personally, just off the top of my head, I would not have done that third hit, because obviously people would have been able to link the three hits very easily. But as it is, you see, it has taken so many years for anybody to be able to link the assassination of Agwing's Godek and that of Mboya. So this is probably one very good reason why Jaramogi was spared. And then don't forget that Jaramogi personally did a lot for Jomo Kenyatta. It was the reason why Jomo Kenyatta was president. So I would understand why the government would have been hesitant to include him in the hit list. But what happened maybe was much worse for Jaramogi, because he spent his entire life out in the cold as far as politics was concerned. I think sometimes a wasted life is much more painful than a life just lost, especially to the individual. Because now we'll never know what contributions Jaramogi would have done had he been active politically. We'll never know how effective or ineffective he would have been. That can only now be debate and conjecture, guessing what might have happened and so on and so forth. We will never know for sure. So that was a wrap for this particular operation. What was to follow was that the confrontation in Kisumu was a good enough reason to ban the KPU and to arrest Jaramogi, because had these events happened, the arrest and the banning before the Kisumu events, it would have easily looked like Kenyatta was being too hard, like an iron hand was being used, some sort of dictatorship was creeping into the country. Now, make no mistake about it, a lot has been said about Jomo, but one thing Jomo was very careful about was never to be labeled a dictator. And many times he went out of his way to make certain pronouncements, to make certain decisions, so that it would look like the Wananchi were always in control. That was his style. And let nobody tell you otherwise. So this operation was a wrap. It was a total success. What remained now was the spreading of propaganda to completely discredit the Luo as a community, so that the rest of the country, the chances of the rest of the country being able to team up with the Luo in a sort of political alliance would be minimized. Indeed, that propaganda was so successful that up to this day, we are now in the year 2017, March, up to this day and time, the Luo are still ostracized as far as Kenyans are concerned. People still look down on the Luo. This community which has produced such brilliant doctors, such brilliant professionals. I mean, you can go walk into a hospital in the US and find that the topmost world specialist is actually a Kenyan and is a Luo. Yeah, I can be able to point out one or two names to you immediately concerning that, and I know there are many more, specialists in different fields. But this was deliberate government propaganda. And that is why you started hearing things like, Wajaluo Tairi, Wajaluo ni kurusha mawe kila saa, Wajaluo wogi, all those kind of things. And even growing up, I used to hear these stories, and I used to, hear how Luos are not fit for this, they're not fit for that, and so on and so forth. This was a government project. And it all started with this operation that we have covered, that covered most of 1969, that unfortunately led to the demise of one of the founding fathers of the nation, the late Mboya, somebody who had done so much for this country, somebody who had done so much for us, for the speeding up of our independence, for our independence to come earlier, somebody who was a great politician, despite the CIA links that now have been established, or rather recognized with full evidence from the irrefutable evidence from the organization itself. So that this is really what it was. I think for any intelligence organization working for a country, first and foremost, it's very important to look at the impact on the people, and especially the long-term impact. While appreciating the pressure under which this gentleman must have been under, and while recognize the situation, which we have done very well, I think, in this series, we have been able to bring that out. We have not been one-sided. Despite all that, they should have been able to look at the long-term consequences of what they were doing. Because this operation single-handedly made sure that Kenya is very, very tribal. At the least provocation, Kenya becomes extremely tribal. And not only that, the damage that was done in that year, 1969, will never be repaired. Yeah, sorry for sounding skeptical, but this thing is so deeply ingrained in the Kenyan community, in Kenyan minds, in Kenyan psyche, that even there are some who listen to this series and they'll brush it aside and keep their opinion on the Luos. Yeah, and meanwhile, our Luo brothers have suffered so many years. They've suffered underdevelopment. They've suffered being looked down on. They have suffered being treated as inferior Kenyans, and so on and so forth. Yeah, if there was a true justice and reconciliation commission that was to come up, I believe the first item on the agenda, as bad as killings are, the first item on the agenda should be a public apology to the Luo community. I've said this many times in the Kumekucha blog, and I believe it from the bottom of my heart, that for us to heal and be together and have the cohesion as a nation, we need to apologize to the Luo community, because the injustice which was done to them in the name of security of the state, the harm which was done to them has lasted many generations. Surely you can see that. I must confess, personally, I felt very relieved, like a burden has been lifted off my shoulder, a big burden has been lifted off my chest as I complete this series, because I believe this is very important for every Kenyan. I believe every Kenyan should have access to this story, to be able to realize what happened. The government should be able to acknowledge that this is what happened. They should be able to apologize to the Kenyans, and especially to the Luo community. They should be able to look for ways and means to heal this, so that we can face the future as one nation and one people without tribalism. Thank you very much. This is Chris Kumekucha. Bye.